The wind screamed like a mourning mother through the canyon, dragging white sheets of snow across the dying fire. She sat in the drift, knees bloodied, cradling two swaddled infants to her chest. One whimpered. The other had stopped making sound, an hour ago. Her lips were cracked, skin bluing, but she still sang, barely a breath, barely a whisper. "Sleep, my darlings. Mama's here." Above her, vultures circled low, black shadows against a pale and furious sky. The cabin, what was left of it, had burned in the night. No food, no firewood, no husband, just her, two babies, and a land that did not forgive the weak. Then she saw him, a silhouette on horseback, wrapped in furs, watching her from the tree line. A bow on his back, beads in his braids. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Not yet, but her eyes found his across the storm and her voice cracked open one final time. "Please." And that was the beginning of everything. Subscribe now, because tomorrow's story will haunt you even deeper. You'll need it. But before that, let me take you to the day it all began. They called it Mercy's Hollow, though mercy was the one thing you'd be hard-pressed to find there. A two-street town crouched in the Wyoming basin, wind-lashed and sun-seared, with its chapel splintering at the steeple and the saloon swaying just slightly when storms rolled through. The dust here settled deep into your clothes, your skin, even your bones if you stayed long enough. And Lark Whitmore had stayed far too long. She walked with a slight limp from where a horse once threw her. When she was 16, when her father still believed in God, and her mother still baked peach pies on Sundays. Now her mother was a wooden cross on a windswept hill. Her father, a whiskey ghost that haunted the back room of Barlow's Tavern. And Lark, well, Lark was a widow. Twice over. That's what the whispers said anyway. She cursed him, they muttered. Both men dead before the ink dried on the license. She's got the devil in her blood. Just look at that eye, clouded like a dead fish. Her left eye, pale with an old wound from a coal flake in the mine blast that took her second husband, gave people reason enough to look once and then look away. She kept it under the brim of her hat, low as it could go. Didn't matter. People remembered. There was no one left to sit beside her in church, not that she went. No one knocked on her door unless it was to sell something or warn her a cougar was sighted near the creek. Even the children stopped asking for candy after they heard the story of how her baby had died in her belly the same night her husband was buried. She never corrected them. Truth bent easier than it healed. So Lark kept to herself. Her cabin sat 2 miles out from town, tucked behind a frost-bitten grove of pines and built by hands that no longer held hers. She kept chickens. She cut her own wood. She talked to no one except the wind and her horses. Some days not even them. It wasn't that she didn't feel. It's that feeling too much had nearly broken her. Then came the telegram. It arrived on a Tuesday, dropped at her door by a boy too scared to meet. Her gaze. A single line, scrawled in her late sister's hand. "Come. I can't keep them." Twins. Her breath caught in her ribs. Phoebe had married a railroad man in Missouri, a brute with oil-stained fingers and a knack for saying nothing when saying something would have mattered. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since the last letter, ended with, "You made your choices. I'll make mine." Now here it was. Another choice, another silence broken too late. She left that same night. Didn't pack much. Just a satchel, her father's old rifle, and a shawl that still smelled faintly of rose soap. She rode all the way east, through snow that cut the cheeks like knives, and when she reached the house, Phoebe's house, there was nothing left but a midwife too tired to lie. "Your sister's dead," the woman said. "Fever." She made it 2 days after the birth. Man's gone, ran off with a girl half his age, left the babe screaming on the floor. Lark didn't scream. She just picked them up, those 2 wrinkled bundles of breath and sorrow, and rocked them until the cold stopped biting. She stayed in that house a week, buried her sister beside a dogwood tree, then packed up what she could and headed west again. Back to the cabin, back to the pine grove, back to a place where ghosts already knew her name, only this time she wasn't alone. The babies cried a lot, one more than the other. The boy, Thomas, had a wheezy chest and fists like thunderclouds. The girl, Ruth, never closed her eyes all the way. Lark stayed up through the nights, boiling milk, praying over fevers, learning lullabies she'd never needed before. The town noticed, of course. They always noticed. She's raising someone else's bastards now. Probably stole 'em. Someone should check. Babies don't just fall from the sky. Lark didn't answer. She never did. She walked to town once a week with both twins strapped to her chest, traded eggs and quilts for sugar and medicine. People watched her like they were waiting for her to break. She didn't. But she bent. Late January came in cruel and came in fast, the kind of blizzard that seals your door shut and snaps trees at the root. She chopped wood until her arms trembled, burned through it quicker than she could stack. The cabin grew colder. The babies coughed more. She knew what hunger looked like. She'd seen it in her father's eyes. She wasn't going to see it in theirs. So she bundled them up one night, what little firewood she had left crackling like it knew it was the last, and headed to the old logging trail near Wolf's Bluff. There was an abandoned shed there, she remembered. Maybe some timber, maybe even rabbits near the traps. She made it halfway before the wind turned her sideways and the snow came down like fists. The world shrank. White. Just white. And screaming. She knelt beneath a twisted oak tree, heart stuttering, teeth chattering. She knew the way back, knew it in her soul, but her legs wouldn't move. The girl whimpered. The boy stopped moving. Lark pressed them close, humming broken things, songs without words. She prayed one last time, and that's when she saw him. If this is breaking your heart already, you haven't seen the worst yet. Tap subscribe. I've got another truth waiting for you tomorrow. The snow had swallowed the world whole. Trees stood like ghosts, all shape and no substance. Her breath came ragged, every gasp a knife. She couldn't feel her legs. She had stopped trying to feel anything at all. Then the horse stepped into view. Not loud, not sudden, just there, tall and dark against the curtain of white. A bay, built for storms. Its rider sat like part of the beast itself, quiet, motionless, watching. He wore furs stitched from hides she couldn't name. A long braid swung over one shoulder, tied with a strip of red cloth. His face was unreadable, half shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind shrieked, between them like a warning. Then, with slow, deliberate care, he dismounted. She wanted to speak, to beg, to explain, but her lips stuck to her teeth, and all she could manage was to tighten her grip on the two small bodies inside her coat. He crouched a few feet away, eyes level with hers, and pointed, not at her, not at the children, but at the cabin. Her cabin. He knew where she'd come from. Or maybe he just understood people who survived alone. She nodded. It was all she had. Without a word, he rose, stepped behind her, and began to clear a path. They didn't speak for the rest of the journey. He led the horse, and she followed behind, him like a shadow stitched to his back. Every few yards he glanced over his shoulder to check she was still upright. Once, when her knees buckled, he caught her by the arm, gentle but firm, and held her steady until she found her feet again. The fire had long died by the time they reached the cabin. He pushed open the door and helped her inside. The babies, still wrapped close to her chest. She expected him to leave then. Men like him didn't linger. Comanche hunter by the way he moved and the quiet power he wore like a second skin. But he didn't go. He knelt by the hearth and began to build a fire with kindling she hadn't noticed him carry. In minutes, flames danced, casting long shadows on the cabin's log walls. Lark sat, trembling, holding the twins closer. Finally, she whispered, "They're not mine." He looked at her, not confused, not surprised, just patient. "They're my sisters." She died. Still, he didn't speak. "I thought I could keep them warm," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought I could do it." He stood, walked, to the cupboard where her tins were kept, and began preparing something warm from her meager stores. He moved like he'd done this before. For himself, for someone else. When he brought her a bowl, she noticed his hands. Scarred, weathered. "Careful, they have names?" he asked at last. His voice was low, deep like a canyon echo, rough like pine bark. "Ruth," she said. "And Thomas." He nodded, then returned to the fire. That was all. No praise, no pity. Just the acknowledgement of life, hard-earned and still holding on. He stayed 3 days. The storm hadn't passed, just softened. Wind still howled at the walls, and snow still pressed against the windows like a burial cloth. But inside the cabin, the world had changed. He chopped wood without, asking, hung rabbit meat on the hooks by the stove, fixed the broken hinge on the door. Lark watched him from the cradle, feeding the twins in shifts, her hands still shaking. He spoke little, and when he did, it was in phrases worn smooth by years of disuse. But she listened, and when he was silent, she found herself listening harder. He told her his name, Tahoma. She told him hers, Lark. On the second night, when Ruth cried with a fever, he held her gently in one massive hand and hummed something low and rhythmic, something old. Ruth settled like she'd known the sound her whole life. "Your wife?" Lark asked softly. He looked, down at the baby, then up at her. His expression didn't change. "Gone," he said. Lark didn't ask more. They understood each other too well for that. The fourth morning, the sky broke blue. Tahoma saddled his horse. "You saved our lives," Lark said. He paused at the threshold, hand on the reins. "You're saving them now," he said. She stepped forward, fingers brushing the doorway. "Will I see you again?" His gaze lingered on hers. "If you want to." Then he rode off, swallowed by the tree line like a dream fading after dawn. What if someone saw you for who you are, not what you carry? Subscribe. One day, that story might be yours too. Of course, the town noticed. When Lark next returned with the babies bundled in a sled, she found the glances sharper. Words came in hushed huddles behind crates and porch rails. "Comanche tracks near her cabin," someone said. "She's got one of them helping her now. She'll bring danger to all of us." Old Mr. Sutter spat near her boots. "You'd best keep your business out where we can see it." She didn't answer. She held Ruth closer and walked on. But that night, when she lit the lamp and looked out across the white field, there were eyes in the dark. Watching. Not Tahoma's. These were colder, men from the town maybe, or others, hungrier, opportunists smelling weakness. She reached for her father's rifle and pulled it down from the mantel. It happened on a market day. Lark had bundled the twins and made the cold, slow walk into Mercy's Hollow with a basket of cured meat, hoping to trade for cloth and dried apples. The sun was high, but it gave no warmth, just lit every shadow, every stare. People moved aside when she passed now, not from respect, never that, but suspicion. Fear, maybe. She could feel it crawling over her skin. That's when she noticed the stares weren't just watchful. They were waiting. She stepped into the trading post and found herself surrounded. 2 deputies, Mr. Sutter, and the new preacher, a round-faced man with soft eyes and a voice full of brimstone. The door closed behind her, locked. "Where are they?" Sutter asked. Lark gripped the basket tighter. "Who?" "You know damn well. The savage. We know he's been sleeping in your cabin." She blinked. A beat of silence. The room creaked. "He's not," she said. "And if he was, he'd still be more decent than any of you." The preacher stepped forward, voice smooth as lie. "You're risking the lives of those children. You think the Lord wants them raised like that? By a woman like you?" Her hands shook. She thought of the cradle, the laughter, the tiny fingers around her thumb. "You don't get to tell me what the Lord wants," she said. That's when Sutter slapped her. Hard. Her head snapped sideways, hat falling. The room went still. And then, the preacher nodded to the deputies. "Take the children." They forced her outside. The townspeople were already gathered like they'd known, like they'd been waiting. The twins were crying, bundled in the back of the sheriff's wagon. Lark thrashed against the men holding her, screaming until her voice tore, but no one moved. She heard phrases. Unfit. Danger to the town. Let a real family raise 'em. Then someone spat in her face, and just like that, something inside her gave way. Not snapped. Sank. She stopped struggling, went limp, and when they released her, when no one was looking, she ran. She ran into the trees like a storm-racked bird, blood in her mouth, salt on her cheeks. Branches clawed at her dress. Snow swallowed her boots. But she didn't stop. She ran past the cabin, past the creek, into the deeper woods where even hunters didn't go in winter. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't go back. Not again. Not without them. She collapsed, beside a dead log, arms wrapped around her ribs like she could hold her own heart together. The cold crept in. Her breath slowed. Maybe this was it. Maybe it was better this way. She didn't hear him approach. 1 minute, she was alone. The next, the air felt warmer. He was there, Tahoma, kneeling beside her like the forest had grown him from the ground. No words, no surprise, just presence. Her lips cracked open. They took them, she rasped. I fought. They took them. He looked at her, really looked, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't rage, it was pain, the kind that knew her kind. He didn't pick her up. He didn't carry her. He just took off his fur cloak, wrapped it around her shoulders, and sat beside her in the snow. No rush. No rescue, just with her. After a long silence, he spoke. Where? She swallowed hard. Sheriff's wagon. Maybe the church. He nodded once. She expected him to rise, to march into town like vengeance given form. He didn't. Instead, he helped her stand, let her lean on him, and when she collapsed again halfway down the trail, he lifted her, gently this time, and carried her the rest of the way home. He built the fire high, laid her in her bed, fed her broth from a carved wooden spoon. When she cried, he didn't speak, just pressed his forehead to hers and breathed with her. When she woke the next morning, she found him sharpening his knife by the hearth, not for violence but preparation, calm, steady. They'll come back, he said. They won't stop. I can't fight them. Not alone. She looked at him then, broken in every way a person could break, and whispered, Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her face, her bruised cheek, her cracked hands, her storm-torn soul. Because when I saw you in the snow, he said, I saw myself. That night, he held her, not like a lover, not yet, but like someone who knew what it meant to be left behind and chose to stay anyway. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she didn't face it alone. They thought she was broken, but someone saw gold in the ashes. Subscribe. I promise you, tomorrow's story will prove love still lives out here. The morning after her collapse, the sky was a sheet of steel, windless and watching. Lark stood barefoot on the porch, shawl around her shoulders, watching Tahoma repair the hinge on the goat pen. His movements were steady, deliberate, like every nail he drove in pushed back against the chaos the town had tried to sow in her. Why are you fixing that? She asked softly. He didn't look up. We stay, don't we? She didn't answer. She just turned, walked inside, and began to sweep the floors like the whole place was going to be seen again, by someone other than ghosts. It started with the goats. Then came the lumber. Then the letters. Tahoma took apart the old shed near the bluff, board by board, and repurposed it into a new wall for the barn. Lark stitched curtains for the windows and cleaned the old cradle. Every day brought work, sweat, silence, and moments that pulsed between them like lightning behind storm clouds. They talked in pieces. He told her he once had a brother, burned alive when their village was razed by cavalry. She told him she once wanted to be a schoolteacher. He laughed for the first time. You still can. She shook her head. They wouldn't let me teach a dog to sit. But the laughter stayed in the room. They reclaimed her life, piece by piece. The townspeople kept their distance. Rumors thickened like smoke, but no one came out to the cabin again. Not yet. Still, the twins remained gone, and that made everything they built taste faintly of ash. One day, as they laid fencing for a horse corral, Lark stopped, leaning on the post, breath clouding. I keep dreaming of them, she said. Tahoma looked up. I dream I find them in the woods, she whispered. But they don't recognize me. They call another woman Mama. He stepped closer. We'll bring them home. She looked at him with eyes worn thin by hope. How? They made me out to be feral, unfit. They lied. And lies win. Not when they meet truth face to face. They went to the town together the next week, not armed, not angry, just together. He held her hand as they passed through the square. People stared. Some spat. Others turned their faces, but they walked to the preacher's house where the twins had been placed under temporary custody and stood on the porch. The preacher answered the door, righteous and rigid. You can't just show up here. We're not here for your permission, Lark said, voice clear and steady. We're here for the children, and if you don't release them, we'll go to Cheyenne. We'll go to the judge. The preacher scoffed. No one will believe your word over the towns. Tahoma stepped forward. Then they'll hear mine. The preacher froze. His eyes darted down the street, seeing, perhaps for the first time, that the wind had changed. The children were returned under supervision. They were quiet at first, confused. Ruth clung to Lark like she was trying to memorize her smell. Thomas cried in his sleep for a week. But they were home. Tahoma carved 2 small cradles from pine. Lark sang lullabies at night, her voice still, hoarse but stronger than before. They weren't just surviving now, they were building.